Hi folks, HR Funk here. Those of you who have been to HOP Munitions already know it's a very interesting place, especially if you're a firearms enthusiast. There are a lot of things to see and a lot of good people to talk to, and one of those people is Mark. And recently when I was at HOP Munitions, I was talking to Mark, and he informed me that they had two new loads in their handgun line, one of which was a 38 Super and the other was a 45 ACP. Being a 1911 fan, he already had my attention. He went on to say that the 38 Super load features a 90 grain bullet at a rated velocity of 1,600 feet per second, and the 45 ACP features a 185 grain lead semi-wad cutter hollow point at a rated velocity of 750 feet per second. So opposite ends of the 1911 spectrum, but both were equally cool. So by the time I left, I had one box of each of those to test out, and in this video we're going to head off to the range. I'll show you how those loads perform, we'll take a look at the accuracy results, and by the time we're done, you can see if you're as interested in them as I am. So here we go. And here are these two new loads from HOP Munitions. First is the 38 Super cartridge that you see here, and as I said, it features the use of a 90 grain jacketed hollow point bullet. And I was very interested when considering this particular load to know how this light bullet being driven at a velocity that high might do when it actually impacted something. So there is going to be some footage in the video featuring this load and its performance on some water bottle desperados. And also I have the 45 ACP load, which, as I said, features the use of a 185 grain lead semi-wad cutter hollow point. And when I left HOP Munition with this box of ammunition, I was a little curious as to exactly what the application for this load might be. Now there are some bullseye shooters and some very accurate 1911s out there that do quite well with lead semi-wad cutter ammunition, but this being a hollow point, I thought might have some applications beyond bullseye shooting or informal target shooting. And we'll talk about that more as the video progresses, but I did first want to just give you this close-up look at the two new loads. For the initial testing of these new loads, I selected two 1911s from my collection. The first is my Iver Johnson 1911A1 that you might recall from a couple of months ago when I swapped out the rear sight for this MMC adjustable unit. And this has been an extremely reliable pistol. I have not had a malfunction with this handgun yet. And with ammunition that it likes, it's demonstrated some very good accuracy. So I was curious to see exactly what kind of performance we would get from it and what type of functional reliability with the new light 90 grain HOP Munitions load at that very high velocity. For the 45 ACP, I selected my Colt Competition Series 1911 that you see here. And the reason I picked this particular 1911 is because in the past it has demonstrated some very, very good accuracy with some other lead semi-wad cutter ammunition. So I was curious to see how it would perform with that 185 grain lead semi-wad cutter hollow point load. When I got to the range, my first order of business was an accuracy test from a distance of 15 yards. And from that distance, I'll be shooting from the bench, off of bags, and I'm shooting through the chronograph. So you'll see the velocities for each shot annotated at the bottom of the screen. Also, I started out with the 45 ACP load, and I fired a 5-shot group from that distance of 15 yards. And something I want to point out is with both my Colt and my Iver Johnson, I made no effort to dial in the sights for these specific loads. So I wasn't sure where they were going to hit. And as you'll see with the Colt, I started out with my first 5-shot group and it hits somewhat low, probably 3 or 4 inches low. So after that, I set things up again and I fired another 4 shots, but I raised my point of aim slightly just to get a little bit closer to the target that you're going to see in the video. Then I switched over to the 38 Super in the Iver Johnson and did the same test with it. So here we go, let's head off to the range and see how they both did. So as you can see, I've brought you in nice and tight for a look at these accuracy results, beginning with the results from the 45 ACP and that 185 grain lead semi-wide cutter hollow point. And the first 5-shot group that I fired from that distance of 15 yards is represented by these 3 red stickers. And the reason there are only 3 stickers is because 3 of those shots all went through this exact same hole. This group center to center measures 1 3/4 of an inch. So I was very impressed by that, kicking things off. And I decided that since these shots did hit so low, I wanted to try another group. Now I want to reiterate the fact that prior to shooting this group, I didn't fire these loads ahead of time and make any effort to dial in my sights so that they were hitting point of impact, same as my point of aim. But I did, after seeing where these shots hit, decide to fire another group and just raise my point of aim. So I brought my point of aim to center mass on this black square, and the 4-shot group is represented by these 4 green stickers, and you can see they're still hitting a little bit low, but this group, center to center, measured just a little bit larger than the first one. This is 2 1/8 of an inch, and from that distance of 15 yards, I thought this was pretty impressive accuracy coming from the Colt pistol, and I was very happy to see that. Now let's switch and see what the results look like from the 38 Super Load and the Ivor Johnson pistol. And here's a look at the 38 Super accuracy. From that distance of 15 yards, this 5-shot group center to center measures 4 inches, which is not extremely impressive, but 4 of the 5 shots are in a group that measures 2 1/8 of an inch. So it's entirely possible that I pulled this one high. Now, I don't think I did. The sights looked good when the shot broke, but I also took a little bit more time squeezing the trigger on that one, and maybe I just didn't manage to keep that in with the rest of the shots. That is a possibility. I'm not sure. 4 inches from 15 yards still isn't horrible, but it's just not as good for the entire 5-shot group as I got with those 4 shots. A couple of comments on the chronograph results before we move on. First off, the 45 ACP load with that 185 grain lead semi-wide cutter hollow point had an average velocity of 722 feet per second for an energy rating of 214 foot-pounds at the muzzle. So it didn't quite make it to its rated velocity of 750 feet per second and energy of 231 foot-pounds. Similarly, the 38 Super Load with that 90 grain bullet had an average velocity of about 1,570 feet per second for a muzzle energy of 493 foot-pounds. So it didn't quite reach its rated velocity of 1,600 feet per second and energy of 512 foot-pounds, but a lot of things can have an influence on bullet velocity, and one of those things is temperature. And on the day that I was shooting this particular test, the air temperature was about 30 degrees, so it was kind of cool out. If I was firing this test on a day when the temperature was 70 or 75 degrees or warmer, it's quite possible that both of these loads would have reached their rated figures. Another thing I wanted to mention was in shooting both the 45 ACP and the 38 Super Load, the recoil was very mild from both of them. Now there was some blast from that 38 Super Load, as you might expect, but not a lot of recoil from either one. They were both very pleasant loads to shoot, so I wanted to be sure to point that out as well. When I finished the 15-yard testing, I wanted to move back and try another accuracy test. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't do my best shooting when I'm shooting through a chronograph. There's always this idea in the back of my mind that I'm going to hit the chronograph, and it just doesn't work well when I'm trying to get the most accurate shots that I can on target. But I wanted to change things a little bit, so I moved back to a distance of 25 yards. Again, I'm shooting from the bench, this time no chronograph, and just trying to fire the best groups I can from that distance of 25 yards. Here's how that went. And here's a look at the results from that 25-yard shooting. Once again, starting with the 45 ACP with that 185 grain bullet. And the 5-shot group that I fired from that distance this time around measures 3 inches center to center. So we continue to see some very impressive accuracy from that 45 ACP load out of the Colt pistol. And again, it's a little bit low, but once again, I didn't make any effort to dial in the sights before I started to fire this group. So if I was going to use this load in that pistol for anything serious, I would take the time to make that adjustment. But for just looking at our group size from that distance, I was very pleased. Now let's take a look at the 38 Super results. And with the 38 Super load, once again, we see 4 out of the 5 shots that are in a pretty tight group. This measures 3.5 inches center to center. But this one shot opens the entire group up to 7 inches. And again, I've got 1 flyer and 4 shots that are in a nice tight group. Again, I'm not sure if this is me or if maybe that Iver Johnson pistol just doesn't like something about this particular load, and occasionally we get a shot that goes wide of the rest of the group. Now that said, this is all easily staying in the chest of our target, and unlike the 45 ACP load, I don't know that this 38 Super load is intended for extremely good accuracy. I think this has other applications that this high velocity light bullet might be good for, but extreme accuracy out of at least my Iver Johnson pistol is not something we're going to get. We get acceptable, what I would call defensive accuracy from that distance, but it's just not absolutely match grade accuracy. So with the serious testing out of the way, it was time to have some fun. I wanted to see what would happen when I used these 2 loads and actually shot something with them that would react to the impact. So fortunately, some water bottle desperados picked just that time to come on the scene, and I started things off with the 38 Super and that 90 grain bullet traveling at close to 1,600 feet per second, and here's how things went with them. I think I got his attention. I'd say these 90 grain bullets are doing a number on the water bottle desperados. I got one more, folks. Okay, now that's fun. Folks, I think it's safe to say these 3 desperados have pretty much had it. Their days of evil doing are done. So the nice thing about that light 90 grain bullet traveling at such a high velocity, when it impacts the water bottle desperados, as you saw, it is dumping its energy all very quickly. Now we're not going to get probably deep penetration with that load, but we are going to get a very devastating shallow wound. So I thought that was pretty impressive. That's kind of what I expected to see with that particular load, and that's what we saw. Next, I moved on to the 45 ACP, and no sooner did I put down the 38 Super and pick up the Colt until some more water bottle desperados came on the scene. Here's how things went with the 45 ACP load and those desperados. So not quite as dynamic as the 38 Super. The semi-wide cutter hollow points tended to punch holes straight through the water bottle desperados. There is that one. And this one I hit low. It's down here at the bottom. Now, as you saw, we didn't get anywhere near the energy dump or the impact with the 45 ACP load that we got with the 38 Super load, which is not surprising given the mild velocity of that 45 ACP load, but I just wanted to test it out on the desperados and see how it would do. Now, I'll say at this point, I don't think I would use either one of these loads for defensive purposes. The 45 ACP is something I would use for anything that required a high degree of accuracy, and about the only way that I could see that being used for self-defense would be if you had someone, or if you yourself are someone who is very sensitive to recoil and the only firearm you have is something chambered for the 45 ACP. But if you have the option for another type of ammunition, or you can tolerate a little bit more recoil, there is much better defensive ammunition out there in the 45 ACP cartridge. Same thing with that 38 Super load. With that high velocity, very light bullet, I would not expect a high degree of penetration, and I just don't think I would use it for self-defense. Truthfully, the 38 Super load, the thing that I could see that being used for is if you had a small creature that has invaded your backyard or your garden and you wanted to try to eradicate it with a 38 Super chambered handgun. I think it would work very, very well for that. It's also just plain a lot of fun. And if you have any kind of reactive targets, especially something like the water bottle desperados, it's a lot of fun to shoot those with. Now, I had more or less finished my formal testing with this ammunition at this point, but I had some of the ammunition left over from the 45 ACP. I had basically used all of the 38 Super ammunition, but I had some of the 45 ACP left. So the next day, I decided to go back out to the range, this time with my new Tizosh Raider pistol, and just my main focus for going out that time was just to see how it would function. Now you saw that with both loads previously, the functioning in both of my handguns was perfect. And I just wanted to try the 45 ACP in something else and see if the functioning would still be just as good. So when I got out to the range, I set things up, and here's how that testing went with the Raider pistol, just for functional reliability to see how it would do. And the functioning was absolutely flawless with the Tizosh Raider. So I got done at that point, and I had pretty much concluded the recording that I was going to do for the video, and with the cameras turned off, I decided to try an accuracy test with the Raider. So standing unsupported from a distance of 7 yards, I used one of these small circles that you're going to see on the target that I was using for the defensive drills with the Raider, and I held center mass on that and just tried to squeeze off 5 good shots. Here's the result of those 5 shots. Folks, that 5-shot group center to center measured 3/4 of an inch. So after that, I turned the cameras back on and I wanted to see if I could do that again on camera. Now you noticed 4 of those 5 shots were forming one large hole, and there was one shot that was just far enough away that there was a sliver of paper in between there, so I did not have a 5-shot one-hole group, but I wanted to see if I could pull that off again firing unsupported from that distance of 7 yards, and here's how it went the second time around. And here are those 2 groups, folks. This was the first one that I shot off camera. And again, this one shot just barely wandered outside of the rest of the group to keep it from being a one-hole group. There's a little bit of paper right there, but center to center, this is 3/4 of an inch. This is a 6-shot group, and this is the one that you saw me shoot. It is slightly larger. This measures about 7/8 of an inch center to center, but all 6 shots are forming one large hole. So I was extremely happy about that. So we saw good accuracy from that new 45 ACP 185 grain lead semi-wide cutter hollow point load out of the Colt pistol, but the Tizosh Raider absolutely loves it. Unfortunately, these were my last 6 rounds of that ammunition. So guess what I'm going to be picking up the next time I go to HOP Munitions? And I would say at this point, looking at these results, if you're looking for a very accurate low recoil cartridge for your 45 ACP chambered handgun, you might well want to take a look at this load, because if you get results like this from your shooting, I think you're going to be extremely happy with it. So there you go, folks. That's my report on these 2 new loads from HOP Munitions. As always, if you have any questions or comments, be sure to forward those to me. Remember, if you purchase anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off your purchase from Optics Planet. Also remember the discount code from HOP Munitions. If you go to HOP Munitions, you can use my discount code there, which is HRFUNK10, and that'll save you 10% off your purchase from HOP Munitions. Last but not least, the Target sponsor for the channel, my newest sponsor. Go to Target's online, check out their website, and see if they have anything that's going to meet your Target needs. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.